Hello and welcome to AZAAZ. That's Ask Zenatta Anything About Zoho. This is Volume 1, Issue number 10 for Wednesday, May 24th, 2023 from Zenatta Consulting. I am Brett Martin and I am joined by Jordan Poole, Josh Oliver, and Greg Belknap, and we are here to answer all of your questions that we have received this week, whether on our YouTube channel or over on clubzenatta.com. So with that, let's get right to it. We're going to start with Greg.
Yes, this question comes from Inam Farid, who asked inside of Club Zenatta, I have two tables, calls and deals. So this is in Zoho Analytics that they're referring to. The calls table has the columns call owner and call duration, and the deals table has deal owner and deal revenue. So now I want to get these details in a new table called revenue model, in which I want to see how much time a call owner takes to get a deal and its value. So the key for this one is, even though this is a Zoho Analytics thing, really it comes down to making sure that you're keeping your data good in the CRM. So you want to make sure that your calls are related to the deal, and then very easily in Analytics you can create a pivot table where a call is related to a deal by that ID number. And then you can just make a pivot table where you drag in your deal owner and your deal name and the amount, and then get the duration field for the call and plug that in the data as a sum. Bob's your uncle. That's it. Now you've got that table you're talking about where I can see that Sam had to have 18 hours of phone calls over this year to get all of these deals. I don't know. Sam probably should be doing a little bit better than that. But yeah, so just make sure those calls are getting tagged to the deal appropriately, and you're good to go. Otherwise, you'll need to use SQL and then use some special join code to get those tables matched up the way that you're thinking of.
Next up, we got Rich Schaefer asking a question on Club Zenatta. He says, I am trying to connect Zoho CRM to marketing automation. It will not let me do this because I'm already connected to campaigns. YouTube says that I cannot disconnect CRM from campaigns. I am supposed to email Zoho support and ask them to disconnect CRM from campaigns and then ask them to connect CRM to marketing automation. I cannot locate a Zoho support email anywhere on any of their products. Can you provide that info and also where they hide it? Thank you in advance, Rich. So you are correct. Once you are connected to campaigns, if you want to sync those contacts into marketing automation, then I believe there is some way to do a shared sync, but it's still going to campaigns first and then would feed over. But if you're not wanting to use campaigns at all and you want to go straight into marketing automation, you do need to message Zoho support. The best email is support@zoho1.com. And anytime you're messaging Zoho, it's easy. You can just go support at and then whatever the application is. So I think support@zohocampaigns.com is also a email as well that you can reach out to. I always just go to Zoho1, support@zoho1.com, because they'll direct me to the right department. And this is also an intra-app function, so it's going to need to update in both spots. With that said, I still prefer Zoho Campaigns over marketing automation right now, so you might want to just stick with campaigns. Most of the things you can do in marketing automation, you can do also inside of campaigns, and there is a better sync to campaigns and some other just more... just better features. It's been much more well thought out, and the sync into CRM is better as well. So I would try to convince you to stick with campaigns, but if you are ready to switch over to marketing automation, you will need a contact support.
Yeah, and just to reiterate, echo what Josh is saying here, Rich, you're really much better off staying with campaigns at this point in time. Marketing automation was released all the way back in 2019. Kind of pulled from the market in early 2020. And I know that is the 2.0 beta officially out yet? It kind of is. And we're really not sure what they're going to do there. I mean, if you look at the two applications, you'll see that they're strikingly similar. Marketing automation has a few little more things that are in it that you can do with it. But man, at the end of the day, it just, we have not kind of given it the green light yet. So I would, I like Josh said, stay with campaigns.
When I'm looking at the two, it seems like marketing automation is much more like lead driven focus, like trying to capture leads. Whereas campaigns is a little bit more focused on just campaigning efforts to maybe some of the already existing contacts in your CRM. So again, I would stick with campaigns, but there are some minor differences between the two apps that you could consider.
Okay, also from Club Zen, we've got Daphne here asking us, I'm new to Zoho Desk and I'm wondering on the settings, I would like to automatically fill in the order number, which is a custom field they have in Desk, from the email. Our order numbers are always start with DP, followed by 8 numbers. The structure is therefore always the same, DP and then 8 numbers. Supposing a customer might put another space between DP and the number. How can I get this done? So that's a very good question. Thank you for asking, Daphne. You would want to create a workflow automation inside of Desk, and that workflow would need to trigger a deluge function that uses Zoho Desk's API, and you would need to parse either the content or the subject line, depending on where that DP with the 8 numbers is contained. And so you'll need to search for DP, strip that out, grab the number, and then paste it into the custom field with a quick update call. A warning we're going to add to that is that there could be other places in the email where the letters DP show up naturally. So you'll want to use regex in order to try to get as accurate as you can on parsing that out. We've got an example that we can throw up on the screen here. It's basically a content.replaceAll function. I know you mentioned in your original question that you love our content, but you are non-technical. So if you are struggling with the regex piece of it, we actually do have a video on YouTube that I'd highly recommend checking out that goes over regex. But that's what you would need to do. You would need to have a custom workflow in Zoho Desk that uses a custom function that will parse out that number, paste it into that custom field for you. It's unfortunately not something that the system would be able to do without some custom code involved.
All righty. And our next question also comes from Club Zenatta, and this is called Account Ownership. And Michael Reel is asking, we are Zoho One customer. The question I have is related to account owner. How have other customers of yours dealt with the desire to not have any real users, meaning employees with a license to Zoho, own accounts? Our business model is that we have a user in sales who owns the account while it is in the lead status. Then when it transfers over to another user while the account is on onboarding, and once they are done with onboarding, they are no longer owned by any user. They are just part of our normal pool of accounts that our support team collectively manages. So since there isn't any way to leave the account owner field null, is the best way to have the account owned generically by the support team or just buy another license from Zoho and create a user called support? Your last one is probably the best answer, Michael. I mean, you could just have it generically owned by the support team or someone in support, or the super admin is always good. So whoever the super admin of your org is, they could just own that account across the board. One of the advantages of setting up a separate user with full, perhaps admin privileges is that you can, have your workflows and other things kind of attributed to that user. So when you're looking at a log, oftentimes it'll say, in our case, prior to us doing this, it would always be Brett Martin did this, Brett Martin did this, Brett Martin did this. And of course I didn't, but it was just all those things were assigned under me. So now, we actually have an admin account. We recommend a lot of our customers get an admin account as well. It's unfortunate that Zoho doesn't let you kind of have a free admin setup kind of thing there that you can just do that with, so you can attribute things to that. So you will have to pay for that additional user. But I think with what you're trying to accomplish here, that's probably going to be the best solution. Either that, or like I say, if you don't want to do that, just assign it to whoever the super admin in the organization is and leave it at that. Guys, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would highly recommend the admin, like he said, Michael. One other thing to think about is when you're offboarding a user. If you have someone on your team that is your super admin that's an actual person, and you choose to make all of your custom integrations with the other Zoho apps, all of your automations, etc., through that one user, and that person leaves your team, boy howdy, do you have a lot of mess to clean up when that person leaves the company. It just, everything breaks because it's all authenticated through this real human who's no longer with the business. If you have a non-human license that is just a Zoho admin email, then everything lives and dies there. So it belongs to the company, not to a human, and you never have to worry about that offboarding issue where everything just goes wonky. So honestly, I would bite the bullet and just do it.
Yeah, the other thing you need to consider is record sharing and how you have your roles set up. Based on your roles set up, if you have certain modules as set as private, only that role is able to access their records. And so if you're going to assign records to an admin account or to some role higher than whoever is accessing the CRM, then they're not going to be able to see it. So you can still get around it using record sharing rules inside of roles, but just know if you're not seeing a record, that's likely the issue.
All right, our next question comes from a YouTube Stay on the Tip of the Week that I did, syncing analytics over from the CRM. Chris asks, hi, great video, but how would I go about doing it in the reverse way? As in, I want to pull data from analytics to Creator. So the way you'll do this is very much in the same way. You just have to set up a connection and then use an API call. So I do have a screen share for this one because in Zoho Creator, it might be a little less clear where you make that connection. So in like the CRM or whatever, you'll go to, just your settings and there's a connections page there. The interesting thing about Creator is that your connections are attributed to your overall Zoho Creator account, not app to app. So, because I remember the first time I wanted to make a connection in an app, I was searching around my app's settings for a long time before I realized I had to go back to my overall Creator homepage. Then in the upper right corner, you have a little person with a gear next to them. That's your account setup. So you click on that, and then down here you have integration and connections. And here is where you can create all the connections that you will use across all of your apps that you've made. So here you would add a connection, select the Zoho OAuth, and then find your Zoho Analytics data. You could get just the data.read or the data all. You could also just get a full access scope, and that works too. So then you will have your connection here that you will be able to call from within a function inside of your Creator app. Then I'll show you the API call that you want to make is called export data, which is found under the bulk API category in the Zoho Analytics API documentation. Another tip, you'll want to make sure that when you search for the Zoho Analytics API documentation, that you find the V2, which you can see up in the URL, whether you have V1 or V2 up here. The V2 has a much more streamlined interface. But the really nice thing is that there's actually an option to see what the API call looks like in Deluge. So you can just copy this request here, and all you're going to have to do is just change your ID numbers up here of your org ID, particular workspace, the particular view that you're pulling in, and then, just add any additional parameters as they're defined down here to this invoke URL. And there you go. That's how you can pull in information from analytics within Zoho Creator, is you'll just use this API call inside of a Deluge script.
Okay, so this next question is also from YouTube on our Easy Pick List Management with Zoho CRM Global Sets video. And the question is coming from Health Direct Pharmacy Services. So they've asked, thanks for the quick tutorial for differentiating local versus global pick list sets and how to set up global sets. I do have one question that to some extent extends upon this. My scenario is I currently have a local pick list field, the state name, and a single line field, the state abbreviated, which is read-only. I also have a workflow associated with those two fields. And when a state name, Arizona for instance, is selected, that state abbreviation field is updated, AZ in this case. Will the workflow update all modules that have a global pick list, or do I need to clone the workflow and tie them to each module? That is a very good question. Thank you for asking that. It is really cool that they gave us the global pick lists, but unfortunately the answer is you do need to clone those over and create a new workflow for every single module that you have that unique pairing between the pick list and the single line field. Workflows don't really care what field is triggering them. It's not going to notice that the workflow is being triggered on a global pick list. Therefore, I should just follow that pick list around and do the same thing in every module. It is very unique to the module and the field that you're triggering it on. So you do need to clone it over in every instance and do this basically the same little code snippet that you have, but it's just going to take a little bit of cloning, and you're going to have multiple workflows running depending on how many modules you have that set up on.
Greg, have you played around with the global pick list yet as far as API calls on if it's returning a value or an ID?
Nope. I have not. I don't believe the global pick lists are exposed in the API just yet. I know they're working on a lot of stuff they're already working on V5 of the API for the CRM. I think global pick list is going to be involved in that. So we'll just have to see. My guess is that it will come back. My guess is that it would come back with a map that has both the ID and the value in it.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Next one here is kind of a two-part question. We got two of the same question regarding a video that I've done on Shopify and Zoho inventory integration and automation. The first one here is from Nail Artistry Beauty Studio. They ask, "Hi, excellent video." Thank you. "I got as far as connections. My Zoho inventory has no predefined connections, and I'm not sure what scopes to collect. I just keep getting an error that I haven't selected the right ones." So yes, I did not actually go through creating the connection because I had already set it up. But to do this, and I'm actually going to point you to our Club Zenatta post. So if I share my screen here, yep. Another person, Dustin Rami, asked the same question. He was having some issues with scopes as well, and I defined it here. So you will need these 4 scopes when you create the connection. One is to read sales orders, 2 to create and update invoices, and then 1 to create customer payments. So these are the only 4 you need for this function to work. You might want to include other scopes for future functions, or whenever you have a future function, you just add to that same connection. And the other thing you'll need is to make sure your profile has read-write access for each of these modules. So if you are not an admin user and you are setting up this connection, you need to have at least read access for sales orders, read and write for invoices, and then write for customer payments. So as long as these criteria are met, you will be good to go. And I'm just going to go ahead and point you to Club Z because there is the full breakdown of the post in line items with step-by-step instructions. So if you ever have any questions or you want to copy and paste the code directly, then you can come to this post here on Club Zenatta. And if you haven't already, just go to clubzenatta.com and join us. And we have a bunch of different posts every week. Greg's always posting in different code shares. We also have general discussions in here and some other things as far as things we noticed. And if you ever have questions for this AZAAZ, you can come straight in here and post it, and we'll answer it on our next video. So thanks for watching.
Yeah, an interesting thing about when you're creating those connections, occasionally in some of the apps, there will be multiple scopes that can do effectively the same thing. And sometimes if both of them are selected, they can somehow weirdly disagree with each other. And then when you're trying to set up the connection, it'll say that you've got some mismatched scopes or some invalid scopes. Yeah. So just be aware of, like, it really seems like you should be able to just, if I just check every box, then I'm guaranteed to have the right one. Well, fortunately it's not quite that simple. So just keep an eye out
I've
for those.
seen that happen with like the .all, because you'll have like sales orders .all, and then you'll have sales orders .read, sales orders .create. And if you select all three of those, it might throw an error because the .all does create and read at the same time. So by default, I always just choose the .all if it's available, but you might not want to give that permission to your scope. So be careful, set the ones you need, and don't just aimlessly throw them all in there.
Awesome. So this next question we have is from another YouTube video on how to create a Zoho survey 2022. And this question comes from Delangeli. And they've asked, is there any possibility to increase word counts in the questions in Zoho survey? So that is a very good question. I am assuming you say that you want to increase the word count on the question. You're talking about the actual wording of the question, not the answer to the question, in which case the answer is unfortunately no, you cannot. It does have quite a high character limit in Zoho survey. I think it's around 65,000 characters that you can have in your question. So if you are asking questions in your survey that are longer than 65,000 characters, that would be quite exceedingly long. I imagine your use case for that is that you have a long description that you need to go along with the question to give them some context. If that's the case, I might recommend using something like the heading or description boxes that come in survey, where you can add big text boxes of descriptions. Those also have the same limit of about 65,000, but you can add multiple of them because they're not directly related to the question. So you could drag on some of those, add all of your contextual information for the question, and then ask a shorter, more succinct question for the actual question that refers to the data above, and then do it that way. The other option would be to have either a hosted web page on your website that you hyperlink to in the question that gives them the contextual information they need, or even just a hosted Google Doc that you share. But unfortunately, that is a limitation on the field that is hard-coded by Zoho, not something that's a setting that you can just decide accepts higher limits. If you were asking about the answers in the individual questions, then yes, you can adjust to a certain limit what the character limits are for your answers. You can make both a minimum and a maximum on those. And to get to those, you just need to go into the advanced options that will show up when you go to edit any individual question in Zoho survey. There's a little drop-down caret for advanced options that will give you the ability to set a min and max up to a certain maximum that Zoho will allow, because their databases can only store so much info in a single field.
But I think they felt they had that covered, because most of the time in surveys, I mean, it's 65,000 characters. You know, that if the average word was 6.5 letters, it's a
pretty massive
long.
description.
It's a 10,000 word article you've got there. So I think you're probably okay.
All right, and this last question comes from Club Zenatta. This is from Matt, who asks, I've been experimenting a lot with ChatGPT, and the potential is endless. I agree with you. However, when you start to develop complex workflows with multiple calls to ChatGPT, you push the limit and often exceed the 40-second timeout limit on invoke URL calls. Do you have any suggestions or workarounds to allow for a 60 to 90-second custom function to run? Is it time to move out of Deluge and into another language to manage the more complex tasks? So this is what Matt is referring to here is a limitation that I think a lot of people don't know about, which is that any invoke URL task that you do does have to return a response within 40 seconds or it will throw an error. That's different from your Deluge script as a whole has a maximum of between 3 to 5 minutes to run, but any individual invoke URL does have to return something within 40 seconds. And the hard answer is that can't be changed. Now, in the case of ChatGPT, something that you could do is there is a parameter that you can pass in with any completion request called max tokens. The way that ChatGPT measures its input as well as its output is in tokens, which is it's almost like syllables-ish. it's I don't know. It's not an exact. Well, I mean, technically, it has to be an exact science. It's defined somewhere in their code. We just don't know exactly what it is, but it's not quite by the word. But it's pretty close to however many syllables ChatGPT is spitting back out at you. And so you could set that max token count to be, by default, it's just set to infinity. It's just keep writing stuff until you feel you've answered the question. But you can set a limit to say, I need you to limit your response to under this amount. And so you could try to do multiple invoke URLs where you have that max token value set there. And you can pass in previous chat messages into the next invoke URL that you do so that ChatGPT can remember what it's already told you. But yeah, nothing unfortunately to get around that 40-second limit for an individual invoke URL call. But at least in ChatGPT, you should be able to at least shorten those responses. But you're right. For something complex like this, you might need to move to just kind of beefier software that can handle more asynchronous stuff like that, like a JavaScript, something written in Node.js, and then installing it perhaps as a widget or something would be your other option.
And so I guess another workaround tip for you there, Matt, just to build off what Greg said there, would be that if you do decide to go with a language outside just to process the ChatGPT request, but you still want everything that happens after to get passed back in to the CRM or other Zoho apps, is you could use something like your initial workflow that happens in Zoho, kicks it over to your external script that's hosted, I don't know, somewhere on your website server, PHP script, JavaScript, whatever it may be. And then once it's done doing everything it needs to do with ChatGPT and all the complicated stuff that might take 5 to 10 minutes even, which would also hit other limits in Zoho, you could then pass it back to Zoho Flow via a simple webhook post to throw it back over to Zoho and say, here's all the final results. Now go do what I want to do with it. So you can still post-process everything that you want to do inside of Zoho, just capture it in Flow and kick it where you want it to get kicked, rather than having to deal with, OAuth 2.0 and actually authenticating into Zoho's external APIs from your JavaScript. If you don't want to go down that rabbit hole of fun, you certainly could piggyback off Zoho Flow to do that.
Yeah, great idea.
And I was just doing some research on the back end. It says you can think of tokens as a piece of words where 1,000 tokens is 750 words. So yeah, it's a character limit in word count.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes, a fraction of a word, so a syllable.
Yeah,
it's the closest one-to-one analogy that I've been able to figure out, and it still doesn't fully match up, but it's close.
It seems like you could have just asked ChatGPT that question and gotten the same answer. That's all I'm saying.
probably.
You think you might have been able to.
How do I ask you things more efficiently?
All right, guys. Hey, thanks so much for joining us today for this another episode of AZAAZ. If you would like to get in touch with us over here at Zenatta, you can do so by simply going to zenatta.com and clicking on Drop Us a Line. And as always, you be sure to go over and check out our resource library. That's where we categorize all of the videos and all the articles we've written on all the Zoho applications, give you our thoughts on them. Join our newsletter. That's a summary of everything that happens in the world of Zoho every week. And be sure, as we mentioned earlier, to head over to club.zenatta.com and join. All we require is an email. And if you're looking to train your entire team on CRM, you might want to check out our Zoho CRM team training. One low price trains your entire team from one person to 100,000. And with that, we're going to wrap this show up. I want to thank everybody so much for joining us again. Josh, Greg, Jordan, thanks so much for filling in here today and sitting in, and we will see you guys next week.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
See you guys.